Now turning over to the NL East, that's why I think the Mets are dangerous, and they may be even more dangerous than the Braves, who had a great season last year. And I don't know. I still think the Braves probably will end up winning the division, and I'll get to that in a second. But I think the Mets, out of those two teams, just that pitching staff, and I think the hitting's good enough. That's what you need: clutch hitting, good pitching staff, and you can really make a lot of damage. You saw the Nationals do it even without Bryce Harper. They lose Bryce Harper, get a few more clutch hitters, and then they're the World Series champions still with that great rotation. And I feel like when looking at Mets and Braves, who I think it's like Dodgers, Padres, and then Mets, Braves, you're 3-4. And the Braves have always been a thorn in my side just because they're always the fundamental team. They do everything right. And the Mets are like the opposite. They always did everything wrong. They always threw to the wrong base. You had Mickey Callaway filling out the wrong lineup cards. It was like, and the Braves are just the opposite of that. They could be good or they could be bad. And, they still play fundamentally solid baseball. And that's why they won the NL East for like 20 straight years, back in the 90s and early 2000s. And, they're basically that similar team. They got the young stars, but it's beyond the stars. It's just kind of their way of going about it is, it's like kind of like the antithesis of the old Mets. And it'll be interesting, I think, to see how Steve Cohen works. I think it's going to be them against the Braves, over the next 3 years. Can they overtake them eventually? I think you're probably 1 year too soon, but I wouldn't be surprised if it happens between those two teams. But I think really the measuring stick for the Mets, and really they're ready to win a World Series, I think, is if they can win the NL East. If they can win the NL East and beat out the Braves, I think they're ready to win and have a lot of success in the postseason.
Yeah, I think in terms of the Mets postseason success, I think you're right. I think it comes down to going out and winning that NL East because, unfortunately, like we just talked about with the Padres getting a tough draw, I mean, the Mets would also get a tough draw if they were to match up with the Padres in a wild card game. They could very well go out and lose that game against a pitcher like Blake Snell. I mean, that's no guarantee. I know DeGrom's on the hill, but the Mets obviously have some issues with run support with him. So there's no guarantee, which I think almost makes this season almost even more important for the Mets. And this kind of battle between the Mets and Braves, I think, really important. And it's also going to be really fun to watch going forward because the winner of this division will have the opportunity to avoid that one game playoff. They'll have the opportunity to rest and then take on a team that maybe even a team from the NL Central, which I'm certainly not buying at all, that entire division there. So I think the winner of the NL East definitely has a strong advantage over who ends up having to be in that wild card game. But I think that separation between those two teams is going to be incredibly close because obviously this Mets team, we talked a lot about them. They need to get their starting pitchers back, but their rotation's already good and going to get even better. The Braves rotation is also very solid. I mean, I think they have a very good rotation as well, a very good lineup. It's just an overall very solid team. And I think maybe the Mets, I'm going to agree with you, Andrew. I think they might be a year away just because this bullpen is the one glaring issue for this Mets team. The Braves don't have as big of a glaring issue, I don't think. But you don't really know. The Mets could go out and get a guy at the deadline, and then all of a sudden they could find themselves ending up winning this division. I think it's going to be very close. But unfortunately, the loser is going to have to play in an awesome wildcard game that I think every MLB fan would be so excited to watch. But for those two individual teams, it's going to end up bad for one of them who ends up having to lose that game, even though they are certainly qualified. And put either of those teams in the American League, like we just talked about, they're probably winning a division out there. So it's certainly, I would say, a little difficult for the Mets in the NL East. But overall, I think this Mets-Braves matchup, like you said, Andrew, is going to be a storyline, not just this year, but going forward as well for the next couple years. And it's going to be certainly a fun matchup to watch.
Yeah, a few things. One, Andrew, you talked about how DeGrom guaranteed 7 innings, 1 run. Do you even take that if you're a Mets fan, like the way that they hit for him? I don't know if you sign up for that because can you score more than a run? You might need him to go 9 shutout. No. The Braves, too, I think are really interesting because, they gave the Dodgers a legitimate run for their money. They had them up 3-1, right? And they had leads in Game 6, and I think Game 7 was tied, and then Bellinger hits that home run, right? They win it. But, the Braves were right up there with them last year, and it looked like, looked like Rays was going to be the World Series for a little bit. Dodgers were obviously able to climb out of the hole and get there. But, the Braves being right there just shows that they have the talent to make noise. And you talked about the rotation, Sam. It's, right now they're injured. Fried's hurt, and they'll get back. But they add Morton in the offseason, who is a big game pitcher. He's He's won some big games. He's won some World Series games. And this lineup, too, is awesome. Ronald Acuna, I mean, it's early, but he's the MVP of the league, batting like 480 with like 6 homers, just ridiculous numbers for Acuna, beating out grounders to short, popping up on infield fly balls. He's just electric to watch out there. And so I think the Braves, I do agree with you guys, like Mets, I just don't think are there right now. Like, I think the Braves just have more talent. So I expect them to win this division. A little bit of a slow start, but they're bouncing back just a little bit here. So I do like the Braves to come out of the East. And I still think though the Mets are close. And it will be unfortunate that one of them will have to go to the wildcard game and face probably the loser of the NL West. We don't want to speculate, right? There's so much time. But the way that these rosters look and the way that these teams are playing, it seemed like that would be my bet that we'll get those 2 divisions there. We talked about the Central just briefly. I don't buy it either. I think 3 of those teams are in limbo. 2 are rebuilding. It's a weird time. I guess the Cardinals are kind of going for it with Arenado, but really weird time in the Central. It seems like the loser of the West and the East would be much more suited to, not have to go to a wildcard game than the winner of that division. But yeah, so I'll agree with you guys on the Braves. I do think, they are a team to look out for. They have disappointed a little bit in the playoffs recently. That 3-1, choke kind of, I don't like saying choke, but choke, it's kind of inexcusable, right? You had the Dodgers up in Game 5. So the Braves will be back, I think. I think the Mets will be contending for sure. And yeah, I mean, a potential wildcard game, it's so weird that we're already talking about that this early. But DeGrom in a 1-game playoff, like I'd sign up for that any day of the week. Get to face Tatis, I'm all in on that.
I mean, for me, the one thing I will say about the NL East, whoever wins that, they'll get to play the Central team. And I'd much rather play the winner of the Central to whoever comes out of that wild card game, whoever it ends up being from those 2 divisions. Even if let's say the Dodgers win 105 and they're playing a Mets team that just had DeGrom go, 8 innings shutout on their way to like a 1-0 win over the Padres, or if the Padres slug out the Mets and they beat up DeGrom and they win that game and they're feeling confident. And I feel like that's something that whoever wins that wild card game, they could make damage just because obviously you want the rest, but it's only 1 game. And if you can just, if you believe you can do it, I mean, I think that was something with the Nats. They believed, they ended up coming back and beating the Brewers. And after that, it was like, okay, let's go. And like, they were able to do that. And, before we wrap up, I just want to say, I want to see Trevor Bauer at Citi Field in the playoffs and just want to hear that. I just want to hear that. And I want to see his Twitter reaction after that, how he's going to be, like how pissed off he's going to be because everyone was booing him. And I'd like to see Lindor do the whole Cespedes thing, the grand slam where he had the bat flip in 2015. I want to see that so badly.